Hello everyone, this is Black Cat Zero, and I'm here to tell you 3 creepy stories. Or spooky, I'm not sure which one you want to go with. But let's get started. The name of our first story is The Burn Room. I went to visit a friend one day. She had recently dropped out of college and wanted to get as far away from her family and their judgment as possible. She decided to move to a small town practically in the middle of nowhere. This was the kind of town where everyone knows everyone, and everyone knows everything that happens. It had a kind of eerie feel to it, but from what I gathered through travels, most small towns feel that way. I arrived at her house after 13 hours of non-stop travel. Driving to town was odd. The sign said welcome, but I didn't feel as though I was. As I passed the sign, I felt a chill run down my spine. Strange. I pulled up to the address my friend had given me, slightly confused as to how worn down the house looked, since she had told me she fixed it up. It was just past 7 p.m., and it was dark outside. No lights were on inside the house. I pulled the keys out of the ignition and started towards the front door. I rang the bell. Nothing. I waited for a few more minutes, occasionally glancing at the road for any signs of headlights. Nothing. I knocked on the door and rang the bell once more before deciding to go back and wait in my car. I pulled out my phone to text her as I sat down. She responded telling me that she was really sorry and that she stepped out to go to the store, but would be back shortly and that the door was unlocked if I wanted to go in. I did. When I opened the door, a strong, musty scent washed over me. Switching on the lights, the dusty interior of the home was revealed. It didn't seem like anyone had tidied up in quite a bit. Being a bit of a neat freak, I looked around for something to clean with. After looking around for a few minutes, I found what I thought was a storage closet. Maybe there'd be a duster, or a mop, or a broom, or something. I put my hand on the doorknob and instantly pulled away. It burned. I looked down at my palm and it started to blister. I looked around for an oven mitt or a dish towel so I could open it, and a fire hydrant to put out the fire when I got to it. I found a pot holder and an extinguisher under the sink prepared to open the door, tying a dish towel around my mouth and nose to protect me from the fire. I slowly approached the door, extinguisher ready, and turned the knob, pulling the door open as quickly as possible and extinguishing the fire. I stood in the doorway, waiting for the smoke to clear. When it did, I was horrified. The room was metal on all 4 walls. The inside of the door was as well. The floor was linoleum. But that's not what scared me. What scared me were the bodies. Some chained to the wall, others strapped to what looked like operating tables, some just lying on the floor. The scene was gruesome. Charred bodies. Some of them still had identifiable features. The fire must have been started recently. All of these people were gagged in one way or another. Some of them with rags, ball gags, bits, socks. A few of them naked. Some even clothed in latex. A few of them cut open. Some seemed as though they were still alive. They were. I made eye contact with one of the bodies on the floor. Tears were streaming out of their eyes, their mouths still blocked by the rag. I stood there, shaking. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. I tried again. I'm gonna call... I'm gonna call for help. I choked out. They blinked at me and nodded, their faces contorting in pain. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. After the call ended, my friend sent me a text. It read, "I'm home. Where are you?" I looked at my phone in shock and slowly walked to look out the front window. Nothing. I sent her a text. "What do you mean? I'm in your house, 47 Walnut Road." She called me. "I live at 47 Walnut Lane, you dummy." She chuckled. I didn't respond. "Luna, are you okay?" I didn't reply. "Luna, are you okay?" I still didn't reply. "Hello?" She sounded concerned. I took a shaky, deep breath and looked down at my burnt hand as I saw the red and blue lights flashing. "I'm gonna have to call you back," I choked. I don't feel so good. What do you... I hung up the phone and crumpled to the floor, finally letting out a sob. The police barged into the door. The title of the next one is Lost and found. It started as a joke. My wife and I host a lot of parties, and if you've ever done cleanup after a party, you know that people leave things behind. Hats, coats, consistently. Scarves, purses, hats, coats, constantly. Scarves, purses, whatever. One time I found a pair of prescription glasses stuck between the couch cushions. They were thick lenses too, like Velma Dinkley thick. I don't know how the owner made it out the front door without them, let alone how they drove home. A lot of the time we'll get a call the next day, or the next week, someone going, "Hey, so I haven't seen my jacket lately. Didn't I leave it at your place?" Sometimes no one ever claims it. And Jenny's my wife. We aren't about to call everyone who was at the party just to ask if they're missing whatever we found. So we just chuck it in a wooden chest we've got in the closet and leave it there until someone does come looking. So recently, we had our winter party and someone left their pants here. Now, it was not that kind of party. So I was pretty surprised to find a pair of pants laying around afterwards. They were snow pants, the kind you wear over your other clothes to keep them warm and dry. And they were folded up and stored in a corner. I figured that probably someone had shown up in them to stay warm, and then had taken them off once they got inside. Between the warmth of the house and the warmth of the alcohol, they must have forgotten to put them back on when they left at the end of the night, but didn't have any shots of anyone wearing those pants. So into the trunk they went. As Jenny was tossing them in, she commented, "I bet we can clothe a whole person with what we have in here." We laughed, but then I got to thinking she was probably right. So later on, I dug through the trunk, and sure enough, in addition to the pants, we had a button-down shirt, multiple jackets, several hats, and a pair of gloves, a couple of scarves, and 2 pairs of shoes. While Jenny was out of the house that night, I put the shirt on a hanger, hung the jacket over it, clipped the gloves to the sleeves, and the pants to the bottom, and wrapped a scarf around it. Then I hung the whole thing up in the hallway, plopped the hat on top, and put the shoes beneath it. The pants hung just to the ground, so at first glance it really did look like someone lurking there, especially with the lights off. She started to call out a greeting, but it abruptly cut off in a shriek. I came into the hallway, laughing, to find Jenny standing there with a hand over her chest glaring at me. The clothes dummy swung quietly off to the side. "Real funny," she said. "You about gave me a heart attack." I'm very sorry," I said, but I was laughing much too hard for her to believe me. "Yeah, you will be," she said with mock seriousness, but she was laughing too, now that she was past the initial shock. Anyway, I thought that was all extremely funny, right until I got up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. I walked in the bathroom, turned on the lights, and shouted out loud, because Jenny had moved my clothes dummy into the bathroom and posed it sitting on the toilet. From the bedroom, I heard sleepy laughter. "Do you know what happens when you scare someone who's on the way to the bathroom?" I demanded. "Rags are under the sink. Clean up whatever you need to," Jenny called back. "A lesser man would have to clean up. I have iron self-control," I told her. "Is that why you screamed loudly enough to wake me up?" she teased. I didn't dignify that with a response. Also, I didn't have one. So this became a thing. Jenny and I would move the dummy around, and after a while, it wasn't even to scare each other anymore. We named him Albert, and he was just a feature of the house after a few weeks. We put him in the kitchen, the dining room, wherever. I came home a couple of days to find the clothes slumped in my chair in front of the TV, with one of my beers in his glove. I just got another beer and took a seat on the couch. Jenny came in later and said, "You're not gonna move him? He was here first." I shrugged. "You're ridiculous," Jenny told me, and took Albert's beer. "He's not gonna like that," I said. Jenny laughed. "What's he gonna do about it?" That was a couple days ago. Like I said, yesterday I came home to find Albert hanging by the picture window at the back of the house. His clothes were splashed with something red, and there was a dripping knife wedged in one of his gloves. It was a pretty gruesome sight, and I applauded Jenny's ingenuity. "Did he get you, honey?" I called. No response, obviously. She wasn't about to give up the joke that easy. "Hey, this stuff dripping onto the floor?" I said loudly enough for her to hear me, wherever she was hiding. "I think it's staining the carpet." Still, nothing. So I got a paper towel and wiped up the blood, then took Albert's knife away from him. Whatever Jenny had used really did look like blood, and I was starting to get uncomfortable. "Honey, okay, you got me. Joke's over." Still, no response, so I went looking. I went through the entire house and couldn't find her anywhere. Her car was out front, but Jenny was just missing. I called her phone, but it rang through to voicemail. When she still hadn't shown up by midnight, I was starting to get panicked. I called a few friends, but no one had heard from her. I decided to get a few hours of sleep and then figure out what to do in the morning. I laid down, turned out the lights, and was falling asleep when I heard a slight noise in the hallway. I opened my eyes to see Jenny in the doorway. "Where have you been?" I started turning on the lights, but my voice died in my throat. It wasn't Jenny. Hanging from the doorway of my room, swinging slightly back and forth above his shoes, the knife was back in his hand. My heart was hammering. This was obviously just Jenny taking the joke too far, but when I called up for her again, she didn't answer. My fear spiked. I took those clothes down, carried them downstairs, even though I knew it was totally illogical. I burnt them in the fireplace. I expected Jenny to come out to laugh at me once I got the fire going, or at least to make fun of me for stinking up the house. I don't know what they pack snow pants with, but it smells terrible when you burn it. But the fire burned down to ashes, and I was still alone. I slept for a bit, and when I finally left for work in the morning, there was still no sign of Jenny. I called the police to report her missing, and they're supposed to be sending someone over to take a look around and interview me, I guess. I hope they get here soon, because I just heard a noise from upstairs, and when I went up to look, the door to our walk-in closet was standing open. Hanging from the bars, aligned in 2 neat rows, were a dozen of Jenny's outfits. Shirts on the hangers, pants clipped below, shoes lined up underneath. The bedroom door only locks from the inside, but I closed it and used my tie to tie the knob to the banister in the hallway. I was going to leave the house, but there was a coat rack by the door, and I really don't think I lined my shoes up underneath it like that when I got home. I hope the police get here soon. And now for our final story. It's titled, Lock the Door. I had the strangest roommate in my freshman year of college. Despite being otherwise normal, and even a bit shy, Eddie would, every so often, become frantically possessed by a sudden, overwhelming need to lock the door. It didn't matter which door. Wherever he was, when the fit came upon him, he would leap up, run to the closest entrance, and lock it. People who stood in his way were screamed at. Anyone who tried to stop him would get attacked, until his mysterious sense of vulnerability passed. But the moment it was gone, he would apologize profusely, sink timidly into himself, and scurry away, embarrassed. For that reason, it was hard to hate him, but it became a little easier to despise him each time. I returned home to find myself locked out. Each time I brought him to a party, he had one of his episodes. I even lost potential romantic interest and friends because I was roommates with that Eddie guy. Halfway through the year, after the third almost girlfriend ghosted me, because he scared the living hell out of her, I put in for a dorm room transfer and washed my hands of the poor guy. That was almost 7 years ago now. So when Eddie messaged me on social media and had said he was in town and had run into some travel issues, I decided to give him another shot. I'd always felt sort of bad about how I treated him in the end, so I drove half an hour out to his broken down car. I remember pulling up to the edge of a high cliffside road to see a skinny silhouette waving at me. He was leaner than I remembered, and somewhat more in shape. My headlights illuminated him fully. I saw his face glisten, and I laughed. That was Eddie, all right. Sweat was sort of his hallmark. He hefted the duffel bag and ran up to my passenger side before fiddling with the door handle repeatedly. "Don't pull on it when I'm unlocking it," I told him. He waited a tick. I pushed the button, and he tried to handle it at the same time. "Oops," I said again, hitting the unlock as I did. "Okay, now." He finally got the door open and clambered in with a nervous laugh. "Sorry, man." His long legs folded up a bit as he got situated, and I could see his exposed ankles. "Thanks for picking me up." I shrugged. "No problem at all. Do you know what's wrong with it?" "Yeah, the alternator's been giving trouble. I think the cold weather finally did her in." "Cool." I gave a slight cough to clear my throat, and we drove in awkward silence until he brought up a joke from our past. Just like that, we slipped into the first semester of 7 years before. With all its new experiences, hilarious misadventures, and surprise pressures. By the time we reached my place, I remembered the good things about him, and I was glad I decided to pick him up. On the way in, I pointed to the couch. That's probably the best spot in the apartment. I'm trying to save money these days, so the place is pretty small. Rent these days, huh? He asked, before placing his duffel bag down and sitting quietly on the couch to evaluate its softness. This'll do fine. I can't thank you enough. I'll get out of your hair in the morning as soon as the repair shop's open. No problem at all, Eddie. Actually, I go by Ed now. Good for him. He'd definitely grown as a person from the socially fearful outcast I remembered. But no problem at all, Ed. I went to bed back in my room without a single worry. It seemed like his issues had been resolved by maturity or medication. And who was I to judge someone for their trouble beyond their control? That was in the past. Of course, I was completely wrong. Around 4 in the morning, I awoke and got up to get a glass of water from the kitchen. I knew my own apartment, so my footsteps were pretty much silent, but Eddie still sighed and stirred on the couch as if something was bothering him. I stood by the fridge, glass in hand, as he whimpered, struggled, and then leapt up. In a mad, terrified dash, he ran to my front door and slammed the deadbolt. He gave out a deep breath of relief and remained there with his head down while I tried to figure out the best way to let him know I was present. Well, if he was having a fit, there was no good way to do this. Ed! Ed! He seized up mightily, grasped in as much air as his lungs could hold, and then slowly turned around. His face was obscure in the dimness, since only the light came from the various red or green pinpoints on the television and microwave. But I could tell he was sweating profusely. After a long moment, he managed to breathe again. Finally, he said, "Oh, hey, I didn't see you there." "Yeah." I put my glass down on the counter. "You alright, dude?" He meant his laugh to sound nonchalant, but it came out nervous and high-strung. Same old, you know how it is." I went around the counter and approached him. He moved back a few steps, and I touched the door. "This is a safe neighborhood. There's nothing to worry about." He nodded awkwardly. Unsure, I believed his calmness. I moved my hand to the deadbolt. I wanted to make sure he wasn't getting weird while I was asleep, if I went back to bed. He made a sudden half-hearted leap towards me, hand out. "Don't!" At that moment, I was starting to remember the times I had seen him attack people during an episode. "There's nothing out there." I gripped the deadbolt to turn it back towards me, but a very slight shadow moved somewhere in my vision. The hell? No, it couldn't be. Reacting rapidly, I put my eye to the peephole. My brain made sense of the curved panorama just in time to see a sliver of a silhouette disappear along the sidewalk to the left. Eddie moved closer, bringing the smell of his panic sweat with him. "Did you see something?" "No." I lied. I kept staring through the peephole, watching the quiet night in my otherwise unremarkable neighborhood. The asphalt glimmered darkly under the stars, while distant lampposts cast long shadows across the grass. "Remind me again, what makes you suddenly want to lock the door?" Now that I wasn't actively trying to unlock it, he seemed slightly less manic. "I never told you because I thought you were starting to hate me, but, when I was 8 years old, I had a sudden feeling that I should lock the door. I didn't, and, He shivered. "Some men broke in a moment later and robbed us." I frowned at his glistening shadowed face. "Jesus, was anyone hurt?" He nodded between audible breaths. Another 3 breaths passed in otherwise silent darkness. "She didn't make it." Damn. I didn't know what else to say. Just, damn. No wonder. Before I could elaborate, the sound of something skittering outside reached us. He turned and listened in one rapid motion like a startled animal, and I had to admit, I was none too calm either. Still, I couldn't risk amping up his anxiety. I did want to sleep again at some point. He whispered, "Where was that?" "It sounded like it came from the back." I whispered too. "I'm sure it's nothing. Let's go." I led the way, and we creeped through my apartment. He made sure to mimic my steps, but he was still louder than me, and I nearly winced at every creak. By the time we entered my bedroom and reached the rear window, my nerves were raw. The window was fitted with stops that prevented it from opening all the way. I usually left it open for the breeze, even in the winter. We sat in total darkness in front of that thin rectangle of cool air, looking and listening. We sought any sign of what had made that noise. Have you ever actually listened to the sounds of the city at night? What I had gotten used to as silence was actually anything but. Soft wind stirred, a rustling in the nearby bushes. A train blew a horn in the unknown distance. A dog barked twice. Briefly, an ambulance siren shrieked across the horizon. Under it all, a constant low haunting wail emitted across the world from a nearby highway. I had always hated that noise whenever I had accidentally become aware of it because I thought it sounded like a ghost screaming from far away. But I wasn't about to tell Eddie that. It was about that time my gaze landed upon something among the trees. When I'd first see the closely bunched collection of white pinpoints, I assumed their reflection from somewhere. Now though, as I watched them carefully, I was nearly certain I was seeing them rotate upwards. It was as if someone was spinning a wheel of lights, whose narrow side was facing us. From the size and distance, the wheel must have been 2 or 3 feet in diameter. I whispered, "What is that?" After finding it with help from my pointer finger, Eddie's stare deepened. "I've never seen anything like that. What could it possibly be?" I couldn't make sense of it. While I watched, it grew slightly dimmer and slightly brighter. "It's definitely casting a light around it. I think I saw some leaves above it. Is it changing?" Eddie clutched my wrists as he stared at those strange, upwielding lights. "Is it getting bigger?" I couldn't be sure, but how could it be getting bigger? Unless... Jumping up, I placed my fingers on either side of the door and brought it down swiftly and quietly. Then I turned the latch and locked it before pulling the nearby cord and sliding the blinds down. "Whatever it is, we're secured here. We'll be fine. It's probably just some kids playing with light toys or something." He sighed and opened his mouth to speak, but a visible change came over the silhouetted contours of his head. An instant later, he leapt over and slammed my bedroom door shut. The boom echoed loudly in my ears. I demanded to know what he was doing as he locked my door. Eddie turned around and put his back to it. I could tell he was wild-eyed from the way he whispered, "Be quiet. It's in your apartment." The adrenaline spike from the slammed door made me a little angrier than I wanted to be. "What? What's in my apartment?" His frantic whisper was nearly a hiss. "I don't know. I just know that I have to keep this door locked." I was fuming, but if I spoke, I would have said something I regretted. So we stood there in the dark for a few solid minutes. I began to calm down as those minutes passed, and once I gained control again, I opened my mouth to whisper, "Hey, I'm sorry, The floor creaked outside my bedroom door. I froze. Eddie backed away from the door and faced it alongside me. It was nothing but a dark rectangle in front of us, but I stared at it for any hint of motion or change. The crazy thing was, I had no idea what I was even looking or listening for. What could possibly have been out there? Not only had we left the front door locked, there had been no sound of entry, forced or otherwise. If there was someone or something out there, how could they have gotten in? Dim light began to move across the walls of my room, and I waited for the sound of a passing car, but none came. As we watched the door, brighter light began to roll upwards around us. Again, as if someone was spinning some sort of lit wheel. It didn't take long for us to realize that whatever had been in the distance outside was growing closer to my window. Beyond the blinds, something was coming nearer, but neither of us dared to look away from the bedroom door for even an instant. Then I saw it. Between moving lines of shadow and light, I could have sworn my door handle changed angles. I backed away. A look at the blinds showed definite light spinning closer, as if they were right outside my window and about to come up against it. Grabbing Eddie by the shoulder, I pulled him with me into my tiny one-person bathroom. He closed and locked the door the instant we were inside. My heart was hammering in my chest to the point of actual pain. Grunting my whisper, I asked, "What the hell is happening?" He shook his head. "I have no idea." Are you sure?" I asked him, squeezing his wrist. "This all started with that robbery and attack on your mom, right?" No, he whispered back. My bathroom door was flushed to the outside carpet, but the hints of rotating lights began to appear underneath, as if that insane, improbable wheel had somehow entered my room. Without opening or breaking the window, none of this made sense. "It has to be you somehow." "No, it has to be." I shook him violently. "Is your fear making it real? Is something after you?" "You don't understand," he whimpered. "I didn't finish the story. It didn't start with that incident. I had been getting the urge to lock doors 4 years before that. The first time I didn't, that's when they came." I couldn't understand exactly what he meant. "The robbers?" He shook his head. "Oh God. They weren't robbers, were they?" He shook his head again. My voice dropped to a razor hiss. "What's out there, Eddie?" All he could say was, "They want in." Something about the way he said it finally made me understand. "It's not about the bathroom door, is it?" I looked out through it, thinking of my bedroom door and my apartment door beyond that. "It's not about the literal entrance of the room you're in." As whatever was out there approached our hiding spot, he panicked, gripped onto my hand, and told me I was right. "Then why do you lock the real doors, Eddie?" I shook him until he looked at me despite his fear. "Is it a metaphor? Does it make you feel better? Does it close them off somehow? Why wasn't it working this time?" He began to cry, sending mixed drops of tears and sweat onto my forearms. I couldn't take it anymore. I'm tired of this constant struggle. The high cliffside curb where I picked him up flashed through my mind clear as a crystal, and the fear I had been building since the moment I saw him wake suddenly left me. He had gone to that cliff for a reason, and he probably had second thoughts as he stood there alone in the dark. Completely calm, I asked, "Your car didn't break down, did it?" He shook his head. "You messaged everyone, didn't you?" He nodded. "And I was the only one that responded." He rocked back and forth in front of me. "I just couldn't take it anymore. They wanted in. They're always out there. They want in. I always lock them out, but they never stop. I'm tired of being terrified every minute of the day." Air began moving under the door as the lights reached peak intensity outside. Whatever it was almost upon us. "There's nowhere to go, Eddie. Let's open that door. Maybe you're constantly terrified because they want you that way. Let's face them. Let's be unafraid. And it might just work." He didn't respond, but I dragged him to his feet. I had never wanted to do anything less in my entire life, but there was nowhere else to go. With a firm grip on his wrist, I reached forward with my free hand, unlocked the door, and flung it open. I don't care if you believe me, that's not the point, but I'll tell you what I saw. The lights were eyes, and they were bright enough to obscure the grotesque moving body underneath. I still can't understand how it was spinning like that. Snake-like curves connected in the shadow. Every blazing pinpoint swung up, flashed us with images of hatred, fear, and paranoia, and then continued past, moving on too fast to process. That was the thing. The images were lies. My girlfriend was cheating on me. My teachers at school had thought of me as a failure. My boss hated me and only put up with me because he hadn't found a replacement yet. But each individual lie raced past too quickly to pick apart and resist. I knew they weren't true, but they just kept coming. At the heart of this creature, I sensed the hunger for fear. I kicked the wide gaping mouth away and jerked Eddie out with me. Getting a few past whatever the hell that thing was, it turned towards us again as I flung the bedroom door open. I had been right about the door handle turning. That much I knew in an instant. The madly spinning shadows and the light failed to illuminate the beast that had laid beyond the door. I knew the thing behind us was just a servant to this, because this was so much worse. The only thing I truly registered was a melted face. Its misshapen gaze seized the beating heart muscles in my chest and filled me with absolute terror, as if it had the power to reach inside of me and dredge out all the blackness and animal fear in the corners of my human soul. I knew these things didn't want into my apartment or my bedroom. It wasn't so simple as that. They wanted into our world, and Eddie was some sort of conduit for that nightmarish goal. He had always been. I had the knife-keen, vicious sense that I needed to kill him immediately. But maybe that urge came from the emotions those creatures were giving off. As the sludge specter with a melted face began a rising scream that threatened to deafen me, I grabbed the heavy lamp from my nightstand and smashed the window clean through. I threw Eddie out a moment after, and then pulled my arm from a burning grip of acid to escape. I could only lay on the ground screaming as Eddie did the rest by dragging me away from that place. That was 3 weeks ago. The burn from the grasping hand of that sludge creature refused to heal. The doctors at the emergency room couldn't make heads or tails of it. Something had burned the shape of a melted hand around my forearm and continued to burn as they studied it. They could find no acid, no catalyst, and no heat. Eventually they had to release me. Of course their lack of understanding didn't lessen the hefty medical bill. I parted from Eddie the next day, telling him to stay strong and remain unafraid. We had beaten the force of hatred and paranoia personified and escaped with our lives by charging through rather than hiding. He seemed unconvinced and repeatedly said we hadn't done anything, that I had dragged him out of there, and that without me, he didn't know if he could do it. "But I have a life to live," I told him. Gotta pay for that ER bill and find a new place. He understood, or at least he said that he did. Today I saw Eddie again. He didn't know I was there, because it was just a chance encounter on a city street. He was in a bar watching a television above and drinking a beer. I stood outside and watched him through the window for a moment, awed at the change. He was sitting with new friends. He was confident and completely ignoring the door of the bar, instead of nervously looking at the entrances every so often. It was such a positive change that I actually went inside with a smile. But I stopped about 10 feet behind him. Over the noise of the bar, the television above, I began to hear what he was talking about. His words floated in the air with nearly a stench, burning the ears of those near his group. His new friends agreed happily, and replied in kind. A disgruntled customer nudged me as he passed. "Ignore those guys." I turned away with misting eyes, and walked into the chilled night. I hadn't saved Eddie at all. He had found refuge, not by standing up to those creatures, but by going down a path I hadn't even considered. I looked through the window of that bar one last time. The misshapen creature that had burned me with its touch. It had found the entry into our world that I had craved for so long. Ooh, that was pretty intense, huh, guys? Three spooky stories. My throat is done. But yeah, please like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna be doing some more of these spooky readings. I wanted to do these because I listen to stuff like this as background noise when I'm doing any kind of work. So I wanted to put some more noise out there for you guys to listen to while you're doing your work. And thanks for listening. I hope to catch you guys in the next video.